Thank you very much. Why don't we proceed with our second special guest, Chancellor Timothy White, California State University.
I'd like to thank the subcommittee chairs and Chair Moratsuji for having us today, and I'd also like to call out and thank our alumni and our students and our faculty and staff that are here and planning to testify later this afternoon. As with my colleague Napolitano and Bryce, we are grateful for the governor's proposal to add $142 million to our base budget at the California State University, and by extension, we are grateful to the electorate for passing Prop 30 and for our good fortune for our economy to be turning. This is a 5% increase in the state appropriation proposed by Governor Brown, but I want to be clear that on our instructional budget, we are roughly 50% from the state and 50% from our students, and so a 5% increase from the state appropriation in turn really only adds about 2.5% to our operating funds, which is about the rate of inflation. Indeed, budget cuts have affected everybody in California and across this nation, led to thousands of students being turned away from our campuses, from the UC, from the community colleges, and across the nation. And the reason this occurred is because we just simply did not have the human capital and the technological capital to provide them courses in a timely way, courses that met their expectations and the needs of California. We did our best to protect the classroom during the downturn in the CSU, but we did not have the resources to both recruit and retain enough faculty, enough staff, and we've thus led to an increase of a large number of temporary faculty, which, while excellent in the classroom, do not provide the full service that our students need. And many programs and services on campus that support student success, such as academic advising, things of that nature, were the ones who were cut during that time. Financial aid, advising, library services, computer labs, those are the ones that get pushed aside in tough economic times. And the other aspect for us is that some 50% of our buildings are more than 40 years old. 50% of our, and I don't know if this is precisely accurate, something like 4,600 buildings, state-owned buildings, are over 40 years old, and we know that there's a lot of deferred maintenance. It's approaching $2 billion just for the emergency stuff on the capital side. Now, our trustees adopted a budget of $237 million. You know, the universities came forward with a much bigger wish list and went through an iterative process to get it down to $237 with no tuition fee increases as the UC. And this is a reasonable budget request given the great demand on our system and the state's economic recovery. The Board of Trustees are holding our campuses and me accountable for 4 basic parameters. One, of course, is affordability. The second, of course, is access, allowing students not only to access the university, but when they get to the university to access the courses, and when they get in the courses to access the professor and the laboratories and the sort of things that make it an enriched learning environment to go beyond the ABCs, but to learn teamwork and to learn cultural competence and to learn how to problem solve in addition to the ABCs of their majors. The third place where we're accountable to our trustees and to California is on the quality, and so again, recruiting and retaining top faculty and staff is really important to maintain the quality of the institution, and that has suffered during the recession. And for us, the fourth leg of what used to be a 3-legged stool is now a 4-legged oak bench, and that is completion. We are doubling down as our #1 priority to get our students to degree, more students to high-quality degrees sooner. That is now the priority of the CSU. And so as with the UC system, and I'm sure the community college will speak to this as well, we hope that the legislature will consider adding an additional $95 million to the governor's proposed base budget between now and June so we can appropriately achieve serving the state. You know, this is not about serving CSU. You know, we could be simply characterized as saying, well, CSU wants more money. That's really not the case. What CSU would like to do is provide more opportunities and hope for more families in California. You know, it's really quite amazing. You think of the diversity of our K-12 system. The vast majority of those students go to a CSU, and it's reflected in the diversity, economic diversity, racial, ethnic diversity, diversity by any demographic measure of our students, and we're proud and actually privileged to work with those students. And about half of them are low income, are Pell. In fact, about 140,000 of our undergraduate students come from families of a family income of $20,000 a year or less. It's really quite amazing. Now, so is there need going forward? I would tell you that for this upcoming fall, we have a little less than 300,000 students applying to the campuses. That's a 10% increase in just 2 years. And this past fall, we denied admission to about 30,000 fully qualified California residential students, some of them from your districts. And we're looking for this upcoming fall, unless something changes, to be denying access to even more than that. We have to think as a public policy level of students and their families who make all the sacrifices, do all the right things in middle school and high school, the A to G, AP courses, community service, qualify to go to any one of our campuses, and then there's no room at the end. Seems like a bankrupt contract that we have with our population. Finally, on the community college aspects, 2 of every 3 community college students transfer into the CSU, and their graduation rates are in the 70%. So we have about half of every year new students in the CSU come out of the community college. So that part of the system is working reasonably well. We're working together to make it work even better, to allow students to migrate community college, Cal State, UC, back to Cal State, et cetera, in order to be more seamless for our students. And finally, I would say, as policymakers, we share a responsibility with university leaders, and that is, what is the state facing by way of degrees by 2025? You know, there's a lot of different think tanks, independent think tanks, that come to roughly the same number, and that is, at this current rate of production of degrees, by 2025, California will be 1 million degrees short of enabling the economy that could be here otherwise. So that means really an increase in the production of high-quality degrees in California, and that's not only for us at CSU, but at UC and the for-profits and the privates in the state. So we have really a looming crisis that doesn't seem like a crisis, but it is a crisis in terms of the long-term view, and I think legislators and campus leaders and system leaders need to think for the long term as well as managing the short term. And so it is our shared responsibility to increase the annual number of graduates from our campuses. And even with redesign and innovation and efficiencies, this is going to require more resources. And so we'll do our part, but we seek to have California try and help and do its part so we can serve the future economic strength of this great state, as well as the social mobility of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have the Mr. Bryce Harris, Chancellor of the California Community Colleges.
Thank you. I am Bryce Harris. Have the pleasure of serving as the Chancellor of your California Community College system, and it's really an honor to be here today. And on behalf of my colleagues, I too express our appreciation for a bit of time to talk briefly about the budget, specifically in my case for the California Community Colleges. I want to underscore President Napolitano's earlier comment about our 3 systems working more closely together. She mentioned a number of initiatives. I had the pleasure of working on the part of the 3 systems to look specifically at outreach. It really is our desire to get down into the middle schools to try to communicate with students and their parents at a much younger age, so that all the students in California know that California higher education is an option for them. We find too often too many students get into middle school and ultimately into high school and simply don't think they can go to college. And it's incumbent on our 3 systems to change that narrative, to make certain that every young Californian and the parents of those Californians know that there is a seat in our institutions for those students. Then specifically talking briefly about the budget, again, I could not say enough in thanks to the Governor and the administration and the proposal they have put forward. Frankly, California's community colleges, like all of California education, has suffered greatly over the past several years. Our system at its high water mark in 08-09 had about 2.6 million students in the system, and now our enrollment has dropped down to about 2.1 million students. Turning away 500,000 Californians was terrible for the state, terrible for our colleges, but most importantly, terrible for the students. who simply found us rationing education and no room in our colleges. And so one of the governor's top priorities, which is to fund a restoration of access, will be very helpful. He's recommending a 3% improvement in access. That would restore for about 60,000 Californians access to California's community colleges, on top of the roughly 40,000 additional students that we were funded for last year and about 20,000 right after Prop 30 passed. So as you can see, we're beginning to make a dent in that denial of access to California's community colleges that we experienced over the last few years. The other really important initiative that our colleges have been focused on in recent years is the enhancement of student success. And Governor Brown has recommended a $200 million investment in our Student Success Initiative. I've been in California in community colleges for more than 2 decades, and there's never been a time when I've seen the priorities of the Board of Governors, the administration, and the legislature more closely aligned than they are with California's community colleges currently. Access and success are the 2 driving forces of this system, and the governor's recommended and the legislature ultimately approved last year a $50 million down payment on our student success initiatives, and he has recommended another $200 million investment this year. Now, that initiative comprises 22 recommendations that the Board of Governors approved in January of 2012. We already have a third of those completed. We expect to have another third done this year, and we expect to have all 22 of those recommendations completed and implemented by the end of 2015. That's a very robust timeline for a very vast agenda, but just this year alone we've rolled out a tool called Scorecard that shows all Californians, including the legislature, the administration, and all the colleges, how they're doing on those success initiatives. Another instrument we rolled out this year called Salary Surfer that helps students and parents see what the return on investment is in 150 of the top associate degree programs in California's community colleges. And as you heard Tim White mention earlier and President Napolitano, dramatically increased transfer activities, specifically between the CSU and our colleges. The Associate Degree for Transfer program that now has 1,000 new degrees that have been generated over the last 18 months by our faculty, and a new initiative that President Napolitano announced to her board that will be fleshed out in March. Again, I think there's never been a better time for students seeking transfer from California's community colleges into one of the other public university systems in the state. In addition to that, the governor has recommended wiping out completely the deferrals that have plagued our institutions over the last several years. As all of you know, it's a cash flow issue on the one hand, and yet it's real money at the college level. And having those deferrals wiped out is certainly something of which we are very supportive. In addition to that, we are very excited about Proposition 39 funds. We've already got a great deal, about $28 million of that money out this year, along with another $6 million that we've invested in workforce training. And the governor's made a recommendation on Prop 39 for our colleges again next year, $39 million that we think will be put to use to really help the state and especially our students. So California's community college system is really focused very simply on restoring the access that we have lost and improving the success of our students. I can't say enough about how important student success improvement is. I have said publicly and often over the last few months that if you come to a California community college as a college student, your chances of succeeding exceed 70%, and that's competitive with a lot of selective institutions across this country. However, if you come to us in need of remediation in either math or English or both, your chances of succeeding drop to 42%. Unfortunately, more than 3 out of every 4 students that come to a California community college are in need of remediation in either math or English or both. And so that Student Success Initiative, an initiative that's designed to dramatically improve basic skills instruction, to help students better plan their educational future, to try to do a much more robust approach to counseling and advising and student orientation, is simply something we have to implement and something that must be successful. So we applaud the governor and his recommendation. We certainly thank this committee for your attention. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Chancellor. And so now is an opportunity for us to ask some questions. I'd like to lead off by, again indicating that after years of budget cuts, this is a very exciting time, obviously, for all of us, and to have 3 new leaders of our segments of California public higher education. Again, this underscores the exciting opportunity that we have before us. And so, we want to make sure that we invest and reinvest in public higher education in a smart way. And we've earlier we talked a lot about access, and specifically how access is tied to enrollment. And Chancellor White, you indicated perhaps most starkly what I was trying to emphasize earlier, that we have, I believe you cited the 30,000. I thought it was closer to 20 or 26,000, but 30,000 qualified California residents that were denied an opportunity to attend at California State University. I know that there are many students who would love to also have the opportunity to attend the University of California. The community colleges, the governor is proposing a 3% enrollment growth, and so that is the only segment that the governor has a specific link between the proposed increase in funding to the proposed increase in enrollment. And so for President Napolitano and Chancellor White, how would the UC and the CSU feel about the legislature going above and beyond the governor's January proposal to increase funding for the segments, but tied specifically to increased enrollment?
Well, let me say, first of all, that it would be a welcome investment. That and we could certainly work with staff and come back. Enrollment per se is a piece of the puzzle, but completion to degree is also a piece of the puzzle. And so, really, when we talk about growth, I think for us in particular, it's growth of degrees being produced. And if we have students who, on average, take 5 years to graduate, if through more course availability, a better advising both by people and technology, a better preparation in those preparatory developmental courses in math and early on in their career, even in the summer between, if we are able to get students from 5 years to 4.5 years, that means then we can let more students in at the beginning of the pipeline, so we can grow degree completion without necessarily growing an equal number of bodies in the university. So it is universities are like snakes in the sense that you swallow a freshman class and it passes through the snake until they graduate. It's not exactly a perfect metaphor, but it makes the point. And
get the point.
I'll let your students know you said that.
Yeah. And so, yes, growth for us would be both an absolute number, but also in decreased time to degree and growth in more degrees into the California economy, which at the end of the day is what we all need to see happen.
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Chairman, something very similarly, which is, of course, we would like more enrollment growth. Increasing the community colleges by another 3% without doing the enrollment growth planning for the four-year institutions is, it creates more unfulfilled expectations, really. And so we really do need to think more holistically. But it is, as Tim said, it is who comes in, but also time to degree completion. And so what we would want to do is work with your committee and give you a number that would represent, if his number went up 3%, what would it take for an equivalent number of students to be able to enter the University of California and have a realistic chance, meaning a 70% chance of graduating within 4 years? and tell you what that would cost.
Thank you. I'd like to just one follow-up question, which is for President Napolitano, which is that I know that in my district, and I suspect in all of our districts, one of the complaints that I heard the most often was how difficult it's become over the years for California kids to get into the UCs, and that has been tied, whether accurately or not, to the perception that California kids are being excluded at the expense of out-of-state students that are coming into the University of California. Now, I know I've met with representatives from Berkeley and UCLA, and they've insisted to me that while the number of out-of-state students was increased in order to help basically balance the budget during the Great Recession, that the number of California kids actually was not reduced. Can you comment on those concerns?
Yeah, I think you were, I would say a couple of things. Number one, the University of California has always met the enrollment goal of the master plan, which has included 7,500 students for which it did not receive any funding. So, and it has overall, system-wide, a 10% or so enrollment on top of that of out-of-state students. Where it requires a little more differentiation, however, is at Berkeley and at UCLA. We do have, higher percentages of out-of-state students. None of them above, much above 20%. And so, and they have, to a great degree, helped supplement, because they pay full freight and out-of-state tuition, the ability to keep tuition as low as possible, and to keep those tuition spikes that happen lower than they otherwise would have been. So we could take the point of view that in this day and age we should accept no out-of-state students. I think that would be unwise, A, for financial reasons, but also for educational reasons. These students are going to graduate into a national and international economy. I think having a student body that has representatives or students that come from around the world in other states is a good thing within the realm of reason. So I think we've got the percentage about right. I think if you looked at the University of Michigan or the University of Virginia, which are two of our comparator institutions, you would find them with like 40% out-of-state students. So they went very much the other direction. Obviously, if capacity increases, there may be room to admit even more California residents. So all of those things have to be taken into account.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Mr.
Chairman, if I may just comment on this unfunded students. We have about 3.8% of our undergraduate students who are enrolled receive no, the state support is missing from that student body. It's about again, this is Tim's envelope math, and I can feel my professional staff in the back cringing about now, but it's about 140,000 unfunded, 14,000 unfunded students, which is about $80 million in revenue that isn't coming from the state, so we are supporting those students as well. So the comparable numbers to the UC, just proportionate because of the size of our undergraduate student body, and that unfunded student piece is really, and that's where the added faculty, the academic advisors, the enrichments in class size, first-year learning communities of small cohorts, first-generation poor students are bewildered by going to one of our bigger campuses. They need a little extra care and love in that first year until they figure it out, and then they just blossom. So there is a significant, important issue here for us.
Okay, Mr. Dubovne, then Mr. Chavez. Ms. Skinner.
I want to welcome all three chancellors here today. I'm a kind of a unique product of all three-year systems. I started at Cal State. I then decided I want to go to UC, so did a semester at a community college, and then I ended up going to UCLA where I graduated, so I feel a unique connection to all three of your systems. Kind of follow up on the 3% increase at the community college system that the government is proposing. We had someone from the LAO earlier that said if we took that proposal and made it 2%, that it would save nearly $50 million that they can go back into the system to help with support services, graduation rate increases hopefully, and transfer rate increases. So first, Chancellor Harris, would you feel like it would be an appropriate adjustment to move that to a 2% increase to then use more of that allocated money to help the students that are already in our community college system be able to transfer or be able to get the classes they need to transfer faster? I know from a personal experience, I'm in a district in the San Fernando Valley where we have 3 or 4 community colleges. Most of my interns or students that worked on my campaign would go to all 3 of those or 4 of those community colleges to find classes to be able to find a slot at Cal State Northridge or at UCLA. I was shocked by that because literally I walked up to my community college, enrolled that day, and had classes a week later. They said that would never happen. And I look at the situation as we all want to see greater enrollment, but can we find that number so we increase the amount of funding going to getting students in our system that are there already to a UC or Cal State faster?
Well, it's very difficult at this point to project the right percentage. But to answer your question, any access dollar that's provided goes to adding back the classes we've had to ration over the past year. So that both serves incoming new students and students that are there that have had to lessen their load from 15 to 12 units or 12 to 9 in order to wait on classes to be offered. So there's been a lot of conversation within the system already about whether the right number is 3 or 2.5 or 2. It's difficult to answer that question sitting here today, but I think that we will have in the very near future a much better feel for what the spring enrollment looks like up and down the state and what that's likely to mean in terms of summer and fall demand. However, we can't lose sight of the fact that during this rationing of education, we told 500,000 Californians there just wasn't room for them right now, and many of those students still believe there's no room at the end. And so we need to get those courses back in the schedule, get the students that have delayed their education through and out, and open up more and more spaces for students that we told we had no courses for.
Mr. Chavez.
Really appreciate you coming here and giving your presentation. As I look at California and the competitive environment we are, especially for the world economy and training our people to be competitive, and who's giving the masters and who's giving the BSs and who's giving certificates, this movement for community colleges, maybe giving baccalaureate degrees. My question I've been wondering is, in California, are we structured correctly in higher education? This public triad that we have, community colleges, state universities, university system, is that, and we look forward 100 years, are we structured correctly? Have you guys thought about that? Let's go first.
Yes and no. So I think the brilliance of the master plan is it set up a three-legged stool that was designed to cooperate and collaborate and not compete at all costs at other people's peril. There's no other place in America where that's true. There's no other place in the world where that's true. And all the developing economies are looking to the California three-legged stool, the master plan, as a conceptually solid framework. Now, that plan was initiated, as you well know, in the 60s when the state was half of its size today. The CSU was 20% of its size today, and the same could be said for the other segments. And the issues of preparation in the K-12 system, how the students were coming out ready to go to college, that has changed dramatically as well. So I do think, to your point, Assemblymember Chavez, that we need to redesign the master plan for the next 50 years based on the realities of the way students are being prepared today. Now, we can lament the fact that many students come to colleges any one of our systems not fully prepared to be successful. And we could make the case, well, it's not our fault. But you know what? It's our problem. And we simply, back in the 60s, we had this problem of the baby boom or the post-war boom. How are we going to educate those folks and get them on to productive lives? And that actually was a big part of driving the master plan and creating a document that gave guidance to the campus leaders to not fight and to work together. It was a treaty in many respects. Well, today the big issue is this bolus of students who come with just about everything right except maybe short on math or short on writing or short on something else. Why don't we think, and we're meeting at least monthly and sometimes more frequently now, to figure out how we can take control as professionals in the field to think about how these three systems work better together to serve California's future and its current students. If we turned our back on part-time students, working single moms, students who need 1 or 2 or 3 classes of remediation, we will lose a generation of Californians, and that would be the very worst outcome. So I think sort of like redesigning the airplane while you're flying it, but we're committed as 3 leaders in the fact that our fiduciary boards, our boards of governors and trustees and regents are also interested in us working well together. So I think you will see some good ideas coming from us, driven by the right reasons, not driven by an idea to create another overlay or another this or another that. We have lots of advice. We can figure this one out. That's my view. But if you have a different view, I'll pay attention.
No.
No, I would agree with what Tim said. I think the challenges the master plan has labored under, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, is that it's been grossly underfunded, and that's characteristic of a terrible economic time for all of us. But the elegance of a system that served this many Californians for this long made this state one of the highest college-going rate states in the country is something of which we should all be proud. The needs of the workplace, the demands of for workforce change, and I think, as Tim said, the master plan has to change accordingly. But the concept of a 3-part higher education delivery system in the state of California is still an elegant one when you consider how well it serves the population.
Yeah, just my thought was looking at when community colleges started getting baccalaureate degrees, the impact that for-profit are doing, how they're delivering their systems and marketing, and the desire of people to get a job and what's the fastest way to get there. I think I'm glad that you're looking at, the 3 of you looking at looking at your systems, and you're not looking at rice bowls, but actually trying to figure out how you can blend it. And I got to ask this one question to Chancellor White, because somebody texted to me. Are you going to see campus fees go up to replace, since tuitions are flat? I know I read an article about Fullerton and some other campuses are trying to increase campus fees to make up the loss of money. That was texted to me, by the way, so whoever is watching this TV program, your legislator is listening to you.